We we are in Daf Samach Gimel Amud Sheni, okay, in Yoma, and we are about like 12 lines from the bottom. Ravina Amar. Let's just review. Very simple. Look at the screen. It says here in the Chumash, it says that that a carbon has to be 8 days old. Only from 8 days old, Miyoim Hashmini Vahala, from the 8th day and onward, Yerotzeh carbon. Then it could be used as a carbon, as a regular offering. But Isha Lashem. Now the pasuk could have ended Yerotzeh carbon. Then it could be offered for a carbon. Why does it say Lashem? So the Gemara said in a side discussion that Lashem tells you that even the Sa'ir Hamishtaleach, the Sa'ir that was sent off the mountain, that also could not have been less than 8 days old. It also, even though it's not brought as a carbon in the Beis Hamikdash itself, it's actually thrown off the Azazel mountain, but that itself had to have been 8 days old. So the Gemara asked the question, why do I need this riboy, this word Lashem, to tell me that Azazel has to be 8 days old, right? Even without that, I know the Azazel has to be 8 days old, because in the at the end of the day, in order to become Azazel, it was part of a lottery that could have been brought as a carbon, right? It could have been brought as a carbon. One of the goats is Sa'ir Lashem, is brought as the carbon in the Beis Hamikdash, and one gets thrown Azazel. So it potentially could have been brought as a carbon, and therefore it must have been 8 days old. So how is it possible to have an Azazel carbon being less than 8 days old? That you need this pasuk that tells me that it should be 8 days old. And the answer is because it's possible to make an Azazel without the lottery. How's that possible? So it goes according to Reb Shimon. The first teretz is teretz number 1, that it's Reb Shimon. The Reb Shimon has a viewpoint that if one of them died, right? You have the Suri Mashtaleach, and you made the lottery with the 2 goats. One is Lashem and one is Lazazel. Then one of them died. So now you have to have a replacement for the Azazel goat. So he says you bring the Chavera, you bring another goat, Shaloi Ba'agrala. The second goat does not have to be done with a lottery. So here it's not a lottery. So without that pasuk, I would have thought you could bring a 2-day-old goat to take the place of the Azazel goat that died. Kamash Malan, that pasuk that says no, that even if you're not doing it through a lottery, the Azazel goat has to be at least 8 days old. Ravina gives, this is where we're up to. Ravina says, I have another teretz, another answer. Where is it possible to have an Azazel goat without a lottery? Kegoin, for example, Shehumam, the first Azazel goat got a blemish, and therefore it's not kosher anymore. Bechileloi al acher, and you just transferred the kedusha of the Azazel on another goat. In that case, you do not have to do a new lottery. You just take to say the kedusha of this Azazel, of this animal that just got a blemish, and transferred it over to the other goat, and therefore it did not need a new lottery. And therefore, again, that's the reason why I need a pasuk, because if you're just transferring over to a new goat, I would have thought that new goat could be less than 8 days old. Kamash Malon, that the Azazel always has to be at least 8 days old. So now the Gemara introduced a new idea, which you never even thought about before. The Azazel has to be a tamim. It has to be complete without blemishes. And at the end of the day, you're not bringing this as an offering in the Beis Hamikdash. You're throwing it off a mountain. So the Gemara asked, Umanot Taimra, how would I know? Where do you see in the Psukim the pasul beimuma, that a mum pasels by Sa'ir La'azazel? The Tanya, we learned in the Brisa. Brisa talks about the pasuk talks about animals that have a mum cannot be brought as a carbon. So Torah says, "Isha le'sitna mehem," you're not allowed to put them onto the fire, the fire pyre that's on the mizbeach, mehem, from those animals that have a blemish. Elu achalavim, the fats. Elu elakulan, you're not allowed to put all the fats, miktasim anayim, but let's say a part of it. Let's say just even a little bit, a little drop, like a kazayis. How do you know? Talmud Bavli mehem. The word mehem teaches you that if an animal has a blemish and you shechted that animal, it cannot go on the mizbeach. Mizbeach teaches you zruzrikas dam, that you're not allowed to even sprinkle the blood of a blemished animal on the mizbeach. Lashem, to teach you that not only does a regular carbon need to be without blemishes, l'rabbi sa'ir hamishtalech, the sa'ir that was sent away also has to be without blemish. And if it gets a blemish, then you have to just transfer the kedusha. If it gets a blemish on Yom Kippur, you have to transfer the kedusha to another goat. So now we learned two ideas. One idea is that the sa'ir hamishtalech has to be without blemishes, and another idea is that it has to be at least 8 days old. So these are two chedushim, two new ideas that you wouldn't think it applies to a sa'ir hamishtalech. And the Gemara explains now, the Torah had to tell you that a sa'ir hamishtalech has to be free of blemishes. And the Torah also had to tell you that a sa'ir hamishtalech has to be at least 8 days old. Why? Because one without the other, I would not know. If the Torah will tell you that just that the sa'ir hamishtalech has to be at least 8 days old, I would say the reason is mishum deloy moteh zimna. The reason why it's not kosher, because if it's not 8 days old, because it needs time to become an animal. So therefore, that's why it's not kosher. But I would have thought, Ava Balmum, an animal that Sa'ir HaMishtalech that has a blemish, the matin is in that, it reached its time. In other words, it's still called an animal. I might think that the idea of mumim, of blemishes, do not apply to a Sa'ir HaMishtalech. That's why the Torah had to specifically tell you that Sa'ir HaMishtalech, the idea of blemishes do apply to a Sa'ir HaMishtalech. If the Torah just wrote you that blemishes apply to a Sa'ir HaMishtalech, why? I'll tell you why Hashem doesn't like animals with blemishes to be used in services. It's disgusting by Hashem to use an animal that has blemishes on it. But something that's not yet 8 days old. It doesn't have that label of being disgusting by the Eibusher. It's just not old enough yet. I would think that Sa'ir Mishtalech would be kosher if it was less than 8 days old. That's why I need the pasuk to teach you that even a Sa'ir Mishtalech has to be at least 8 days old. So from here you learn that the Torah specifically had to tell you the two new ideas of Sa'ir Mishtalech. Number one, it has to be free with blemishes. And number two, it has to be at least 8 days old. And the Torah needed to write you those ideas separate. Now, the Gemara gives one last teretz. The Rava Amar. Rava says, again, how is it possible to have a Sa'ir Mishtalech that never went through the goyrel process? How is it possible? Rava Amar, it's a very simple thing. Let's say you made the goyrel and you have a Sa'ir Lashem and a Sa'ir Mishtalech. Now, before you know it, the Sa'ir HaMishtalech's mother, right? The goat had a mother, which was by the seller, let's say. He only sold you one goat. And that goat turned out to be the Sa'ir HaMishtalech. But the mother of the goat remained by the seller. And what happened? On Yom Kippur, the seller, the guy that sold the goat to Hegdish, let's say he had someone was sick in his house. And on Yom Kippur, he had an emergency. And he slaughtered the mother of the Sa'ir HaMishtalech b'Yom Kippurim on Yom Kippur. So therefore, the Sa'ir HaMishtalech becomes invalid because there's a pasuk that says that you're not allowed to shecht a mother and a goat and its offspring on the same day. So if the mother of this Sa'ir HaMishtalech was killed by shchita on Yom Kippur, then the goat itself cannot be killed that same day, being thrown off the mountain. So therefore, that's the problem. So how would they replace that goat? Then that goat, the Sa'ir Mishtalech, becomes puzzle, and they would just get a replacement without doing a goyrel. Is it usher to throw the goat, the offspring, off the mountain? The Torah says, the Torah says you're not allowed to shech the mother and its offspring on the same day. So if the seller of the animal shechted the mother of that day, what is Hagdish going to do with the Soyim Mishtaleach? They're not shechting the Soyim Mishtaleach, they're throwing it off a mountain. So why is that? That's not called shchita anymore. That's just killing it, but that's not shechting it, and so it wouldn't fall under the isser of shechting the mother and offspring on the same day. So the Gemara says yes. Ha'amri b'marava, and they say in the Wefs, throwing it off the mountain is the shchita of the animal. Throwing it off the mountain is like the shchita of the sa'ir mishtaleach. And if it wasn't because the mother of this animal was shechted, we would not be allowed to throw off the animal off the mountain. And therefore, you have to get a replacement animal without a gyro. Very interesting comment the Gemara just said, that throwing it off the mountain, that is like slaughtering it. Because it's a hegdish idea, it's considered as if you slaughtered it. And therefore, it would seem to imply that if someone would go to the Azazel mountain and pick up some of that meat and that's ripped apart and all over the mountain from this goat that is thrown off the mountain, it would seem he would be allowed to eat it, or it wouldn't have a din nevela on it, because the chiyasei letzuk, throwing it off the mountain, that is shchita. Because you do find that, let's say, in the Beis Hamikdash type of services, like say malika, it's not a shchita of an animal by puncturing the animal with the nail of the kohen. That's like a shchita, and you could eat from such an animal. So who knows? But that's one of the a comment you have over here to think about. The Mishnah said, "Im shall meis zeh olav amarav." So the Mishnah said the Mishnah said, new Gemara. The Mishnah said that, let's say one of them died. Let's take for our example that the Azazel died, right? The Azazel died, and you have to find a replacement for the Azazel. If it died, the Mishnah said you have to make a new gyro. So you make a new gyro, you bring two animals, and you have a new Azazel. So now you have an Azazel to take the place of the one that died, but now you have two Shems, two goats that won a lottery to be called the Carbon Lashem. Which one do you?
Don't hear you.
Do you hear me now? Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
That's better.
Sorry about that. I had I don't know, my internet is acting up late tonight. So that's what it is. Hold on a second. I got to share the screen again. Okay. Sorry. Got it. Okay. Now, let's start again. Let's say the Azazel died. Okay. The Mishnah said if you have the two animals, the lottery was done, and then the Azazel died. You got to bring two more animals, make a new lottery, and have a new Azazel replace the old one that died. So now, after doing that, you have two Shems. You have the old Shem, the old goat that won the previous lottery where its partner died, and then you have a new Shem, that the new goat that you made a new lottery with. So you have two animals to use the Shem. So the question is, which one do you use for the carbon? Which one do you use for the goat that was brought into the Kodesh Kodashim? Rav says, Sheni Shebzug Rishon. Use the second one that remained alive of the first pair, Yikrav, should be brought as the carbon. Sheni Shebzug Sheni Yira, the second one of the second pair should be let to pasture and get a mum, and then you bring it, you could keep the money basically, or bring another carbon with it, because at the end, because once the first one, because Rav is going to say that at the end, you look at it, the first one was just suspended. It was suspended. It just, for a little period, it could not have been brought. You needed to have a partner with it. Once you establish who its partner is, it becomes back to being a carbon, an animal that could be brought into the Beis Hamikdash. So he says, use the animal of the first one. Rabbi Yochanan says, Sheni Shevzug Rishon Yira. The second one you get rid of. The second one of the first pair, Yira, you get rid of. In other words, you let that go out to pasture. Sheni Shevzug Sheni Yikrav. But the second one, that's the one you use as the real Shem. not the first one. So the Gemara says, "B'mai kami palgi." What are they arguing about? In other words, why does Rav say use the original one that lost its partner? Because Rav Sava Balechayim, a live animal, never gets expelled. In other words, it could get suspended when the first partner, when the first pair, they were a pair, but when that one lost its partner, let's say lost its azazel, so then it got suspended. In other words, it could not have been brought alone. It needs a partner. So therefore, when you made a new lottery and you brought it a new partner, so that now it's back usable again. So therefore, you could reuse that carbon. You can reuse that animal. Rabbi Yochanan Sava, no, Balichayim Nitchem. Alive animals, once it becomes puzzle, once for one low moment, it's not worthy to bring as a carbon, it's expelled forever. And therefore, you can never use the first, anyone from the first pair. You have to use only the second group. And the one that remained alive from the first pair, you let that go out to pasture. Now, my time at the Rav, where did Rav see his opinion? The Olav Mechusar Zman. He learned it from Mechusar Zman. Mechusar Zman, an animal that's not yet 8 days old. Let's say an animal is 3 days old. An animal that's 3 days old cannot be used as a carbon. So don't we say lav afagav the hashtul lechazer? Right now, it's not. You can't use it. But later on, you could use it. It fixes its problem by turning 8 days old. Shapidami, then it becomes usable and it's good. Hachinami over here, the leishta should not be any different because for a little period of time, that animal was kosher, was usable. Then its partner died, and therefore it's not usable. Now that you got it a new partner, therefore it should become usable again. So the Gemara says, "Midami, how could you compare that? An animal that was never 8 days old was never usable as a carbon at all. Therefore, it's not the same. Hacha over here, Nira, this animal, this goat, was usable, and then Venitcha, and it got suspended. Therefore, perhaps not only is it suspended, but it's expelled. Even if you fix the problem, you can never use it again. And that's the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan. Ella, so the Gemara says, Hainu Tamid Rav. This is the opinion of Rav. The Yolav bin Balbum Oiver. We learn it from a blemish that could heal itself. Let's say a carbon that has a blemish that heals itself. It becomes a kosher carbon, even though during the time it has a blemish, it's not usable. Balmum Oiver, a blemish that heals itself, it's not worthy right now. You can't bring it as a carbon at this moment. But when it becomes usable again, dummy, you could bring it as a carbon. It should not be any different. This animal was at one time good, and therefore then it lost its husband, it lost its partner, so it's not good. Now that you brought it a new partner, it should become good again. And how do you know that works by a blemish? How do you know by blemishes that pass on, you can reuse the carbon? Because the pasuk says about blemishes, ki mashchasam behem. Their destructive force is in them, mum bum. They have a blemish. Don't use it as a carbon. So we darshan, mum bum, hu yaratza. Only when there's a blemish on it, then it's no good. Ha'ava muman, but if the blemish goes, yeratzu, you could use it as a carbon. So therefore, Rav sees his idea that by animals, you could say that a moment of time, it's good, and then it comes suspended. But when you fix the problem, it can become good again. And that's why Rav holds that the first animal that had the Shem Hashem fall on it, you could still use that as the Sa'ir Lashem.
But this is Yom Kippur, and you have a fixed amount of time that Yom Kippur exists. So how long do you stand waiting to see if the blemish is going to go away?
Right. No, but we're talking about but we're talking about we're talking about a case where they made the lottery. So you have a Sa'ir Lashem, a Sa'ir Azazel. The Azazel died. So now the Sa'ir Lashem is not, you can't use that as a carbon anymore because it has no partner. So what the commissioner says is that you bring two new animals, make a new lottery on them. So now you have a new Azazel. That becomes the Azazel for sure. Now the question is, which Shem do you use? Do you use this from the second lottery, second pair, or do you use the original Shem? So Rav said that the original Shem is good because although it was good and then it became ungood, but now it's good again because it has a partner. So that's similar to a blemish that you fix the problem. Once you fix the problem, the animal becomes good again. So when an animal becomes not good, it's called suspension, and you could reinstate it after the problem goes away, because you see that idea by Mum. So he applied the logic that you saw by Mum to our case over here. But Rabbi Yochanan says, no, you can never use that original Shem anymore. Why? Once an animal it has a problem, it's expelled. It can never be used again. Rabbi Yochanan says, by Balmum, we see it works. Miat Rachamona Bahem, hey hu dechi avamum yiratzu. Only a blemished animal, there, if the mum goes away, if it heals itself, it works. Ha kol dechiyan, any other case where an animal was pushed away, so to speak. In other words, it became suspended. Hoil v'nitchu, since it was suspended, nitchu, it should remain suspended. In other words, it's expelled. So it's only a special din by Balmum, but it does not apply in our case. The Rav seems that Rabbi Yochanan has a pasuk. Bohem seems to tell you that that it only applies by Balmum and not in any other case. So Rav has a new drasha from the word Behem. Behem teaches you Behem teaches you another din, which is that a Balmum animal that was shechted. Let's say they shechted in the base of Migdash and Balmum animal, and then they find out later it was a Balmum. So, and then you have all these animals mixed together that are ready to be brought on the Mizbeach. So the Chumash tells you that once it's mixed up, only then it can be brought on the Mizbeach. When can a Balmum be burnt on the Mizbeach? Only if it's the only one in the pot, the only one in the pan to be brought up onto the Mizbeach. But if it's mixed with other kosher karbanas, then you throw the whole thing on the Mizbeach. Kidetnan, we learned in the Mishnah, Averim Tamimim Be'averim Balmumim. If you have mixture of kosher animals got mixed up with Balmum animals, and now their karbanas got mixed up. In other words, sometimes you only find out I had a blemish after the animal is shechted and everything got mixed up. So Rab Lezer says, if one of them was brought onto the Mizbeach, so we assume that was the Balmum, Yakrivu Kol HaRosh Kulam, then you can makriv all the heads. Kroiv Shel Echem Mehem, Yakrivu Kol HaKarayim Kulam. If the foot of one of these animals were brought up, bring them all up. Because again, Rabbi, from the word Behem, you learn that anything if a Balmum animal got mixed up with other kosher animals, you could minatorah, you could bring it up all onto the Mizbeach. And therefore, that's what he learned from the word Behem. The Chachamim say that even if all of them were brought up, except one of them, you throw it out you burn them. You never bring it up in the Mizbeach, because maybe the one that was left over is the Balmum animal, and therefore you don't bring it up on the Mizbeach. So what's the point? The point of all this is Rabbi Yochanan had a pasuk that said Behem teaches you that this din only applies by Balmum. And Rav said, I use Behem to teach you another idea, that when the karbanos are mixed up, you bring it, that you could still put it on the Mizbeach. And the Gemara says, V'idach, Rabbi Yochanan had both ideas from the word Behem. Bam, Behem, the extra hay in the word Behem, you could have said bum, and it said the word Behem. So from that hay, you can learn two ideas from the word Behem. One idea is that the idea of mum oiver only applies by mumim. Mumim, we could tell you if it heals, it's okay, nowhere else. And Behem teaches you the idea of taroivus, that you could bring it on the Mizbeach. The idach, bam Behem like darsh. Rav doesn't darshan Behem or Behem, and therefore Rav does not have this limitation that you find by Mumin. He applies it everywhere else. So again, where are we holding at this moment? At this moment, we are holding that a machlokes, a very fantastic machlokes between Rav and Rabbi Yochanan. Rav said that you could still use the original sa'ir, and Rabbi Yochanan said that once the original sa'ir was suspended, it's expelled and you can never use it. So the Gemara asks a question. Rav, according to Rav, he name the balachayim ein nidchem. True, Rav holds that a Baal Chai is never pushed away forever. It could be suspended. If you fix the problem, it's good. But Iboya Hai Nakriv, Iboya Hai Nakriv. But you have a choice which one to bring up. You could bring up from the first pair. You could bring up the Soil Hashem from the second pair. So why did Rav chose bring it up from the first pair? You can bring it up from the second pair. Why did he particularly say, you should only bring it up from the first goat, not from the second goat? Rav said, Rav Savalak Rabbi Yossi. Rav holds like Rabbi Yossi, the Amap mitzvah barishon. The mitzvah is always with the first Sa'il Hashem that you chose, use that one. Where do you see this idea that Rabbi Yossi holds mitzvah barishon? So the Gemara says, hey, Rabbi Yossi, where did Rabbi Yossi say use the first one? But would you say this Rabbi Yossi, the kupais that we learned in Masech Shkolim? Rabbi Yossi has an opinion. The Tanah we learned in the Mishnah. There was a big room where they have 1,000 coins, thousands, all the Jewish people put their coins in there. And then they had shalish kupish and shalish shayim. They had 3 baskets. Each basket could hold 3 saw. Shabehem tarmin as alishka. They would take a portion of that coins that were in that lishka, in that room. They would take it and put the coins into one of those baskets. V'chosav aleim aleph beis gimel. And each basket had a number on it, 1, 2, and 3. The Tanya, and now why do we have to label the baskets? Why do you have to count it 1, 2, 3? Later, to know which one was the first basket that was filled up with coins. To buy the carbonus of the Talmud from that first basket. And when that first basket is used up, then you go to the second basket. Because the mitzvah is to use the first basket. So we see this concept, Rabbi Yossi says, use the first one. That's why Rav said, since you technically have a choice to use the first one, the first Sa'il Hashem, or the second one, the mitzvah is to use the first one. So the Gemara says, if you're going to use that Rabbi Yossi as your source, I would say that Dilma, maybe the only reason why Rabbi Yossi said the mitzvah is with the first one, Shania Hassan, because over there is different. The bidone dit chazi kamaisa loit chazi betraisa. When the first one, when you filled up the first basket, you didn't fill up the second basket. So certainly use the first one. But in our case, the 2 goats become viable at the same time. Because after you make the lottery, you still can't bring any of those goats on the Mizbeach. Why? Any of the Shem from the first one and the Shem from the second one. You can't bring them on the Mizbeach. You still need to spray the blood of the par in the Kodesh Kedoshim, and then you slaughter the goats. So therefore, they both became at the same time usable as a carbon. So why should you pick the first one? Maybe pick the second one. How do you know that you picked the first one that was called Hashem? They both became viable to be used, to be shechted as a carbon at the same time. Elo, but we see it, the same idea, Rabbi Yossi the carbon Pesach. Listen to this case. Hamafrish, the Mishnah said, Hamafrish Pischoi, a guy separated, he had an animal, a sheep for his animal, it was a carbon Pesach. But then he lost it. And then he separated another sheep to take its place. And then you found both of them prior to 12 o'clock, prior to 12 o'clock when the start of shechting carbon pesachs. You have 2 of them you can choose from. Now comes 12 o'clock and you start shechting carbon pesach. Chachamim says you can pick whichever one you want. Rabbi Yossi says, mitzvah b'rishon. The mitzvah is with the first one. So you see clearly Rabbi Yossi holds they both became usable at the same time, and nevertheless use the first one. We go to Amud Beis. If the second one was a fatter carbon for the Pesach, then choose the second one. But generally, the mitzvah is berishain. So, but that is the source of Rav. And Rav holds that you pick the first one because the first one, although it was suspended a little bit, but it's never expelled. And when you fix the problem and get it a partner, you use the first one. But Rabbi Yochanan said no. Once it was worthy to be used, and then it became suspended, you can't use it, it's expelled. You can never use it, even if you find a partner for it later. That's it. That's you do Yira Achi Stavo. So just one more piece of the Gemara, and it's very easy. Amar Rav, Rava said, Deikem Asnisin Kavasi to Rav. Our Mishnah is proof to Rav. Ubraisa kavasi Rabbi Yochanan, and the Braisa agrees to Rabbi Yochanan. Masnisin kavasi Rav. Our Mishnah goes according to Rav. The Ktoni im shel mace. Our Mishnah says, let's say the korban, the so'ir that said Shem, that had the Shem that was supposed to be brought into the base of Migdash, died, not the Azazel, but the Shel Shem died. Then you make a new lottery and you find a new Shem to take the place. The idach to the koi, but the other one stays alive. The Azazel remains. So you don't have to replace the Azazel, because now the Azazel, for a time being, albeit did not have a partner, but now that you got it a partner, the Mishnah says you could use it again. So the Mishnah seems to be more muduyekes, more in line with Rav's opinion, that if you fix the problem, you could use the carbon, you could use the animal. Brisa kavasa Rabbi Yochanan, but there's an open brisa that says like Rabbi Yochanan. The brisa says sheni, the second one that you made a new lottery. Eini yadeya im sheni shebzug rishon. Do you use the second one of the first pair? That's the one that you use. Im sheni shebzug sheni. Do you use the second one of the second pair? Which one do you use? The old one that lost its partner, the Azazel, the old Azazel, or the second Azazel? The Brisa says Yomat Chai v'loy shechaberes meis, my mashma Yomat Chai v'loy kshvar omam. This process, the Brisa says, use the second one, not the Azazel of the first one. Why? Because the Torah says Yomat Chai, you stand once. You only get one chance to be the Azazel, not two chances. Yomat Chai, and not that you stood already once and now you're restanding again. So the Brisa says use the second one of the Azazel. So this Brisa seems to align itself with Rabbi Yochanan, that once an animal is given a chance to be a carbon and then it got suspended, it's expelled, it can never be used as a carbon. So again, our Mishnah seems to be aligned itself with the opinion of Rav, that you could redo the carbon, and according to Rabbi Yochanan, you do not ever use the carbon again. Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah. But Oid Omar Rabbi Yehuda, our Mishnah said, and this is the last thing we're doing, Rabbi Yehuda said in our Mishnah, okay, let's say you're with the goat, and the Mishnah said, Rabbi Yehuda had two things. Number one, Rabbi Yehuda said that if you're replacing a goat, the old goat, not that you yira, you let it pasture and then you sell the money and you use the money to the base of Migdash to buy more carbonas. Actually not. You actually have to kill the other animal. The animal that remains has to be killed. And so the Mishnah says, Rabbi Yehuda says, Nishbach Hadam. The kohen is with the goat's blood in the Kodesh Kodashim and it's spilled over. So then you have to Yamasa Mishtaleach. You kill the Mishtaleach, the live goat that's outside, you kill it. What happens? The opposite case, Mesa Mishtaleach. If the Mishtaleach died, right? The live goat died, you shafach dam, then you spill the blood. So the Gemara says here, you see, yomus hamishtalech. You can never, if nishbach adam, and therefore you have to kill the mishtaleach. You can't reuse it again. So Bishla Rabbi Yochanan, this makes sense according to Rabbi Yochanan. The Amar Baalei Chayim Nitchen, that Rabbi Yochanan says once something is not becomes suspended, it's expelled. Bishum Hachi. That's why Rabbi Yehuda said yomus hamishtalech. You kill the mishtaleach. You don't make just a new lottery and then use it again. You just kill it because it's no more used. You can't. It's not usable anymore. Ela Rav, the Omar Baalei Chayim Enitchen. Rav said that Baalei Chayim, live animals, are never expelled. They're only suspended for a short period of time. So Amai YomusAmishlech. Why should you kill the live animal? You should make a new lottery, find a new Se'il Hashem, and start again. Why do you have to kill the Mishlech? So Rav says, Rabbi Yehuda loy kamina. I agree. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it's not the case. Ki amina, I said my theory, Aliba the Rabbanim, that according to Rabbanim, the Rabbanim will hold, not like Rabbi Yehuda, that you don't kill the Mishtaleach. And they hold Baalei Chayim are not nitchen. Like Rav said, the Rabbanim agree with me, and Rabbi Yehuda is the one that holds Baalei Chayim nitchen. So the Gemara ends off. Rav makes sense. That is precisely would be the argument between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanim. They'll have two arguments. One, do you actually, an animal that's not usable, do you send it to pasture or do you kill it? Rabbi Yehuda says you kill it. Rabbanim said you send it to pasture. And not only that, Rabbi Yehuda Rabbanan says, if you could fix the problem, fix the problem. And then the animal that was puzzled for a moment can be reused again. But Rabbi Yehuda says, no, once an animal is not usable, you can never use it again. So that's why that would be the argument between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan. Though according to Rav, our Mishnah makes sense. Ela Rabbi Yochanan b'mai pligi. According to Rabbi Yochanan, what is this argument all about? That Rabbi Yehuda says, V'oid Omar Rabbi Yehuda. He's like saying something more. It seems to be that there is an argument between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan. And according to Rabbi Yochanan, both Rabbanan and Rabbi Yehuda both agree that Balei Chayim are nitchin. Once they're not usable, you get rid of them. Amarav says, I already told you, this is where we'll end. That our Mishnah is in alignment with Rav. And this is another proof that our Mishnah makes more sense if you hold of Rav's opinion. So to recap, is the whole point of this whole daf that we learned is a fantastic machlokes. The fantastic machlokes is that if an animal, which was a kosher carbon, for a period of a time, it was not usable, like the case of the animal on Yom Kippur where its partner died, Rav said that if you fix the problem by making a new lottery and getting a replacement, then you could still use the original animal that won the lottery. Use the mitzvah b'rishayna, the first animal. But Rabbi Yochanan holds that once an animal was suspended and not usable for a short period of time, it's expelled forever. You can never use it. And therefore, you have the yira, you just send it to pasture, and you could only use the zuk sheni, the two new animals that you made lotteries on. Because he holds balei chayim on nitchem. They're not only suspended, but they're expelled. Okay, so here we'll stop.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night. Good night.